Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk for helping connect us.
We are going to see Elon on Sunday, so he's been an incredible support for us. So I don't know how you want to play I'm totally in your hands. I'll follow your lead. But I mean, he's been helping us because Britain's in bad shape, and
and that's why you're here. And this is what we're talking about.
The rape gang. We've done. We've crowdfunded this.
Okay.
Which I'm very happy to talk to you about. Which I think,
just this title of that rape gang report.
Yeah.
The idea that there's actual rape gangs in the UK in 2026, and is it being ignored? Is it being downplayed? Like, how is it being received by the media and by the politicians over there?
Well, the history of it is that basically, as you probably know, Britain, after the war, decided they were going to play a part in Europe, a bigger part in Europe. Well, our elite did, the British elite. And to do that, they had to basically diminish the power of the nation state, and they had to head towards this European superstate, which is the EU, the genesis of which was obviously a monopoly.
Why did they have to diminish the power of the nation to do that?
Because I think Britain was a proud nation state. We with the American help, we'd won the war, and we hadn't been invaded or conquered, which most of Europe had been. So you'd had mass dislocation in Europe. Huge numbers of people had been dislocated and pushed all over Europe. And I think the socialists, I was in the European Parliament, so I spent a brief time as an MEP, a member of the European Parliament, when we finally achieved, a kind of Brexit. We can talk about that, but it wasn't a proper Brexit. So I think the genesis of the rape gangs, going back to this, was the fact that multiculturalism was the order of the day. They wanted open borders. They wanted a multicultural society. They basically felt the nation state had been the cause of world wars, effectively starting with Napoleon. Then obviously we had the Kaiser, then we had Hitler. And I think they saw it that way, the Monnets, the Spinellis, and the people who constructed the European Union. So to the rape gang report, which was your question, ultimately the genesis of that is this multicultural invasion almost of Europe.
Can I pause you for a second? So what you think is that the multicultural invasion, the way it was set up, was on purpose, and it was on purpose to sort of diminish the idea of nationalism?
Yes. I think
so this was like a long plan. So this was something that they must have had to sit down and who would be involved in this sort of a discussion where you would be willing to diminish patriotism, diminish this idea that Britain by itself is exceptional and the people are exceptional?
It was a long, deceitful plan. So I always say...
Who implemented it?
The European elites in league with our elite, who effectively, if you remember, in 1975, we joined what was called the European Economic Community. It wasn't effectively anything other than an economic union. But that very quickly changed, and effectively they tried to politically integrate Europe. That failed, and then in 1997, they tried to force it through with the introduction of the euro. So having failed politically, they tried to do it financially. That was my first foray into standing as a member of parliament to fight to save the British pound, because once you lose your currency, effectively you lose your sovereignty and your national identity. And our gold reserves were going to be shipped out to Germany, to Frankfurt. And we would have become a vassal state, part of the European Union. It would have been irreversible. But in the event, thanks to Sir James Goldsmith, we secured enough votes. We forced the establishment to promise a referendum before they surrendered to the euro. And we ended up saving the pound, which in the end resulted in the referendum in 2016, where the British people voted to take back their sovereignty, which ultimately I think the establishment always knew that the core, the body of Britain, or body of England in particular, wanted its own accountable parliament in Westminster. It didn't want to be part of an unaccountable European socialist protectionist superstate.
So the quote-unquote elites in Britain and the elites in the United States, it's coordinated with both of them. So
I think less so in America, Joe. I can't speak for America, although when you look at what the Democrats did with US aid and all the stuff that was going on under Joe Biden, you have to wonder whether they began with the World Economic Forum to play a part in this. But I think the post-war plan for Europe was founded on a socialist principle, whereas I think America has always been a very sound politically based structure based on obviously the founding fathers and your constitution, which I always think returns power to the individual and has always understood that the dangers are statist dangers, not individual dangers. So I'm very much in the camp, I like the individual and a minimal state. And I think that's much more in your DNA than it is in the European DNA, which tends to be more statist.
Right. So they did this on purpose, and they brought in people from what country specifically?
Well, initially you got in Britain, you got people from Africa. You got the Windrush generation, so you got a lot of Africans came, ostensibly to fill jobs that they always say the British people don't want to do, and it gathered momentum. It was relatively slow to start with, so you had an influx of people coming to the UK. You had open borders in Europe. So one of the absolute embedded rules they have is this freedom of movement concept. So they don't have effectively national borders. But we still obviously had the channel, but we embraced this and we started this immigration. What happened is it gradually happened, and I think these rape gangs have been going on, or we know they have, for 30, 40, probably 50 years, to a lesser extent. But when Tony Blair got in and he undermined a lot of constitutional sort of historical law, you got an acceleration of immigration from other parts of the world, not just from Europe, but also from other countries, South Asian countries in particular, who came to the UK. And the genesis of the rape gangs really is, I think, the cultural oil and water mix of these people coming from what I call clannish societies in South Asia, and coming to very high trust societies such as the one we had and the one you have here, which have taken thousands of years to develop. So they're high trust societies where, and Lee Kuan Yew based Singapore on post-war Britain, where you had honesty boxes for newspapers in London, and you had a country that was completely at peace with itself. So it won the war, it respected peace, it respected freedom, and people were rebuilding their lives, having fought a Second World War to free Europe from sort of, in this case, Germany. Previously, we'd done it at Waterloo when we relieved Europe of the French with Napoleon. So it really accelerated after 97 when a lot of the legislation that Tony Blair and his cohorts passed, such as the Human Rights Act, which embeds within it the ECHR, he created the Supreme Court, they passed laws like the Equalities Act, and there are a raft of other legal acts they passed, which effectively empowered a multicultural society, which in some ways I think damaged the interests of the British people. So,
and you think this is on purpose. And this is my point, is what is the benefit for them to be joined up with the rest of Europe? Is it just purely financial? Is it a power-based strategy where if you can diminish the quality of life for people and institute more laws and put more restrictions on them, you can control them easier, and it's less pushback for the politicians, less pushback for the people that are in charge?
Basically, yes. I think it's the age-old battle between individualism and collectivism. So I think the EU is a collectivist construct, whereas I think Britain, as it was under our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, which, as you probably know, our Bill of Rights in 1689, a lot of that was lifted by your founding fathers who embedded it within the US Constitution. So, and that embeds freedom of speech, it embeds the individual, it embeds all of the rights that I think make the Anglo-Saxon world great.
So how did it deteriorate to the point where they're arresting 12,000 people a year for social media posts?
Joe, it's shocking. And this is why I have got involved in politics. I've been involved in politics since I fought the Maastricht Treaty and then stood, as I said, in 97. I did a lot for Business for Sterling, a lot for Vote Leave. Then I stood for the Brexit Party and I was elected there. So I've been fighting this march towards an unaccountable state which effectively rewards collectivism and punishes individualism, to the extent that now I find myself at the age of 68 as an MP running a party called Restore Britain to try and reverse this tide, to re-empower the individual, to return to our original constitution, and to protect the interests, above all else, of the British people, to whom I think government should be accountable.
Do they still have that kind of unchecked immigration? Is it currently ongoing?
We still have illegal migrants arriving by boat. They can't be, under the current laws and treaties that we're part of. They're not being deported. The judges, thanks to the creation of the Supreme Court, they are now a woke quango. I think a lot of our judiciary is corrupt. So the answer to your question is we still have illegal migration, and we have people living in Britain illegally. We have a lot of foreign prisoners in our prisons, and we have people who come in under various waves of immigration, one of which, the biggest of which, was probably under Boris Johnson, who was actually a Conservative Prime Minister, who allowed thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to come into Britain. And basically, they are now a burden to the British taxpayer. So the answer to your question is they're arriving illegally still. They're living here illegally, or living in Britain illegally still. We've got foreign criminals in our prisons, and we've still got the legacy of this huge amount of immigration which took place.
And are a large percentage of these people receiving welfare from
Yes.
the British government?
Yes.
What percentage?
Well, most of the people who arrive, they're all supported, Joe. I mean, they're put in hotels.
Immediately, as soon as you get there?
In Parliament, I see the contracts. Thanks to my parliamentary questions, I'm allowed to ask questions and scrutinise the contracts for instance, the Bibby Stockholm was a boat which cost the British taxpayer £1.5 billion. It's actually now lying redundant and not being used. But I've seen the contracts for these illegal migrants in terms of the laundry services they get, in terms of the taxi services they get, in terms of the food they require. I mean, literally, it is like it's like staying in a very comfortable hotel. And we've now got these people being settled all across our country.
How many?
In hotels. Well, I don't think the government knows, Joe, to answer your question. I don't think they know how many people are living in Britain illegally.
Was it the similar situation that America had over the last 4 years, where on the low number, they think it was 10 million people came in, which is insane. It's an insane amount of people to come in 4 years.
We think there's enough work to do initially to detain and deport people who are arriving illegally. I mean, to my mind, illegal means illegal.
Right.
So it's fairly straightforward. To the people who are arriving illegally, people living here illegally, the foreign criminals, there's plenty of work to do to remove them from Britain. And then I think we need to turn our attention, and that's in our mass deportation document. I've given you a copy of that, which effectively sets out the constitutional reasons why we have a problem, how we correct those constitutional issues, and how we then practically detain and deport the people who aren't supposed to be here. And once we've done that, we'll then turn our attention to people who are living in Britain, to your point, who are on welfare, who are going to cost the taxpayer a fortune for the rest of their lives probably, who aren't working, who are culturally different to us, who have a different view of their religion to the Christian religion, and are increasingly living in small groups of people who haven't integrated, who are living under Sharia law and who have their own courts. And who
They have their own court?
They have their own Sharia courts, yes. A parallel legal system.
Okay, so it's an unrecognized by the British government parallel legal system that exists inside of England.
It's tolerated.
Tolerated.
It's tolerated.
So they're aware of it.
Yes.
And they're aware of the punishments that this court dishes out?
It's rather like they're policing their own people under their own laws.
And they're just allowing that?
They're allowing that, yeah.
Whoa.
Now I believe, I don't know about you, but I believe if you come to our country, you should live under our laws.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the idea of, well, the United States in particular is a melting pot. And, people come from all over the place, and it's one of the cool things that there's all these different cultures. But there's certain cultures that if you allow them to come into your community and then they institute the laws of the country where they came from, you're going to have a real problem. Like, they don't live the way you live. They don't have the same respect for women that you have. They don't treat them the same way. They don't allow dogs. Like, there's a lot of,
That's right.
stuff that a lot of people might not even be aware that come with that problem. It's like, the idea is supposed to be that Western society is inclusive and progressive because we're intelligent and educated and we care. But you can care so much that you let in criminals, and then you give those criminals all your money, and then the criminals can take over your country slowly but surely. So, and no one thinks that's a possible thing. No, people look at the Colosseum, you look at ancient Greece, and they think, wow, I wonder what happened to those guys. What do you think happened? Probably the same shit that's happening right now to England, the same shit that could have happened to America. Civilizations fall apart for various reasons. And one great way to get them to fall apart is to bring in a bunch of people, and they don't have to follow your laws, and they bring the laws of, wherever they're from, whatever fundamentalist religion country they're from, where they have a bunch of crazy laws that are kind of archaic.
Well, this is Sharia law, Islamic law, as you probably know. I mean, again, to your point, I think the best example I can give people of what happens if you do that is when Lebanon got its independence in 1948, they were a Christian country, and they were a very confident country. They were, they had the best universities. They had a very open society. I never went to Beirut. I don't know if you went to Beirut, but Beirut in the 60s was meant to be the best place on earth to be. Great wine, freedom, very enlightened. It was lots of people were there. the minute that the Muslim population went over about 15%, you started to get a problem with a civil war. You've got the Druze and Maronite Christians in a civil war with the Muslims. And now Lebanon is a Muslim country. And Hezbollah, backed by Iran, is effectively running the show. So to your point, I couldn't agree more. And the rape gang report, which we've written, was crowdfunded by 20,000 concerned English people who we raised not a huge amount of money. We raised about £600,000 in varying quantities people gave, and we did it because the government will not have a statutory inquiry. So our government, and particularly the Labour Party, have been presiding over this because it goes to the Muslim bloc vote. So we have in the UK a system of postal voting. And in a lot of the inner cities and the places where these Islamic populations live, they are or have historically voted Labour. That's beginning to change. They're beginning to vote for Muslim independence now, and I sit with some of them at the back of Parliament. So effectively, this inquiry we did, we set out with a completely unbiased view of what we would find, and we did it because we were pushing the government to have a statutory inquiry. And a lot of the reason I got involved in it was I think it was Elon Musk who triggered. He talked about it because a lot of people in the UK, I don't think, know the extent to which this has been happening and the length of time it's been happening for.
This episode is brought to you by OnX Off-Road. Ever wonder how to reach these epic mountain lakes? They're tucked away, dispersed campsites. With OnX Off-Road, you'll find legal open trails around you and even better guided trails mapped by real off-roaders. Each one includes photos, terrain descriptions, and difficulty ratings, so you'll know if your vehicle is capable before you go. Unlike other apps, OnX gives you turn-by-turn directions on the trail, and their new dispersed camping layer shows where you can legally set up camp. You'll also get private land boundaries, public land overlays, and the ability to download maps for offline use so that you're never guessing, even when you're off the grid. It's a powerful tool built for serious off-roaders. Try OnX Off-Road for 50% off. Go to onxmaps.com/Joe Rogan. Why is that? What is that a failure of your media? Is it a failure of the politicians? Like, why don't people know about this?
It's a total failure of the media, because the media are supposed to be an independent body that holds to account failures of the state. And it's basically because this block vote through the postal voting system, which needs to be changed, is effectively, or has been, keeping the Labour Party in power. So they've put power ahead of principle. And in the report, we cover this. We've covered the reasons why it's so serious. And to your point, we even cover, as you quite rightly say, the fact that dogs are not liked by the Islamic faith, largely because Muhammad liked cats, he didn't like dogs. And what we wanted to do was interview victims, which we did. We did it properly. It took us over a year. We had a rape gang victim, Sammy Woodhouse, who led it. She's got a child by her rapist. And we had a team of people, and we literally produced the witness bundles, and we listened to the witnesses, and then we had a 2-week hearing in London where people gave evidence, and we had a proper barrister who effectively presided over it and then helped us write the report. It's effectively Graham Smith, the barrister, did a fantastic job. And we didn't start out with any preconceived ideas. It started because we read some court transcripts of some of the people who've been found guilty of this, which the government, by the way, has tried to keep quiet. Some of the historical court transcripts disappear. So we've been calling for these transcripts to be kept now. We've actually tried to make a noise about that. And the more we read this and the more we carried on with the rape gang inquiry, the more it became clear to us that obviously there's a link between this power and the abuse and grooming and if you like, damage that was done to white working class English girls. And it does go, and in the report we've looked at the reasons why, to your point, there is a cultural difference of opinion between an open, high trust Christian view of women particularly and the Islamic view of women, which is all in the report. So for instance, as you probably know, if a woman accuses somebody of rape, and a lot of these Muslims come from Pakistan, Joe. They're predominantly Pakistan, and they're predominantly from one part of Pakistan called Mirpur. And there are some from Bangladesh, there are some from Somalia, there are some from Eritrea. There are other Muslim countries that perpetrate some of this. And of course there are white people who perpetrate rape as well, but nothing on the scale of this. This is quite horrific. And our report has effectively uncovered this. I think we've played a part with this report in the government saying that they're going to have now a statutory inquiry, because we didn't have any statutory powers to be able to force people to appear at our hearing. They all appeared voluntarily. The government can actually force people legally to appear. They can actually make it a legal requirement that people attend. We couldn't do that. But there had been reports in the past. There was the Jay report in 2014, and there's been the Casey report, all of which confirmed that this was happening, and the state still continued to try and pretend it was just happening in a small number of siloed areas where you obviously had a high Islamic population. The state has equally failed to collect data on the crimes that are perpetrated, so the ethnicity of the people who are perpetrating the crimes, and from there you can extrapolate, once you've got the data, as to whether or not you've got an extraordinary problem in one particular section of society. And again, using my parliamentary questions, I've been forcing as much disclosure as I can get, and this is how we've discovered that a lot of the data that should be being collected by the police particularly, by the National Health Service, by social services, a lot of the data has not been properly collected, possibly because the state does, I think, know that this is happening, but they don't want to admit that their multicultural experiment, which, as you probably know, famously Enoch Powell warned would fail with his speech, the Rivers of Blood speech, for which he was heavily criticised. So I think they do know, but they don't want to admit it. They don't want to be called racist. They don't want to, and this has permeated the whole of British society. Since Tony Blair, people are frightened to be accused of effectively being biased and white. And we're taught about things, you probably, I don't know whether you have it here, unconscious bias and all of the other sort of what I call woke DEI-driven rubbish, which has permeated Britain in the same way. I think it may have originally come from you guys, but it's certainly had a huge effect on us.
I think it had a great grip on us for a few years, and it's lessened its hold.
Well, thanks to the Donald. Yeah.
Yeah, that helped a lot. And I think a big part of it was Elon buying Twitter, where you got legitimate free speech, and which is, again, back to this 12,000 people getting arrested each year for social media posts recently. Like, that is, how is that tolerated? I just don't understand how people aren't, I was about to say up in arms, but that's also part of the problem, is that no one's armed over there. Well, I have actually got some guns, Joe, because I have a farm. So when you come to the UK, I hope you'll come and shoot some pheasants with me. Oh.
But
if you don't have a farm?
Well, if you don't have a farm, you'll find it very difficult to get a gun of any kind. And even if you have a farm. So Reform tried to politically assassinate me in early 25, and made false accusations about me threatening to hit one of the Zia Yusuf in a meeting, and somebody was saying I went around Parliament saying I was a very good shot and I was going to shoot Zia Yusuf. I mean, if you believe that, I've got a completely clean record. I employ lots of people. I have lots of businesses, and I've never had an issue. But listen, 4 armed police turned up, took all my guns away. I mean, and I'm a member of Parliament. I said to them, guys, you could have just called me up and we could have talked about it. But no, they turned up.
Just from an accusation.
9:30 at night, left at 11:45. We got them on the cameras. Took all my guns, all my ammo, and it took me 5 or 6 months to get them all back. But look, so they don't want the public to have guns, and they are doing their very best to damage the shooters who perfectly legitimately like to go and shoot clay pigeons, who like to go and shoot game, who like to go and hunt. Effectively, they're trying to make that very difficult through the licensing laws for guns. As you probably know, they banned handguns.
The 90s, right?
In the late 90s, because there was a murder up in Dunblane.
One murder.
So everybody, my father used to shoot pistols for Oxford University, and he's dead now, bless him, but he had, all his pistols were taken away. The pistols he used to shoot with at Oxford University. I mean, we now have a society which needs radical change, and we need to release the individual. And to your point on social media posts, there was a lovely lady, Lucy Connolly, who was locked up for 32 months for just a very emotional social media post, which she deleted after 4 hours, about the Southport killings, where this chap, Axel Rudakabana, went and knifed 3 young girls and killed them. despite the fact that the British state through Prevent was aware of this. And we've had a similar case recently with Henry Novak, where, again, it was actually, I think on this occasion, a Sikh stabbed him. And the police, despite the fact when they arrived at the scene, he told them he'd been stabbed. The police didn't believe him, and they tried to handcuff him. And as a result of that, it's arguable that they opened up the wound, the stab wound, and he drowned in his own blood. Meanwhile, his murderer was never handcuffed. So this is where the British state's gone completely wrong. So instead of one law for everybody and one policing for everybody, this sort of view that the white population is racist, which I don't personally believe them to be, I think Britain is a very tolerant country.
Do you think that this perspective that society sort of adopted in the UK about white people being bad, do you think this was there was architecture to it? This was by design that this was done, or is this just a natural response to people being called racist? Because of course, in the past there was more racism than there is today, and people always want to point to that racism as, you know, evidence of colonialism, evidence of whatever it is that happened in days past. But why in England do you think that narrative took hold so well?
Because I think